record. Now, this is probably going to be the last showcase for the next little while because things are starting to get busy again for me. And today in particular, my nieces and nephews are upstairs. So if I hear a crash and, oh God, so much blood, I may have to leave. If that happens, just keep going. So, and yeah, I suppose show us your magic with
All right.
the mannequins. It looks amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Well, welcome to Lisa's little room. So let's see how close I can
Wow.
get you guys. So first of all, you'll recognize our little puppets, my little puppets that I did specifically for SVS. But I want to actually start a little farther back with these guys. These were the first puppets that I have ever made, and I made them for my Christmas card a couple years ago, and they're me and my husband, and they are so outdated to me now. I'm very excited to announce. So a couple things. Everything that I've been learning about puppetry has been found from YouTube videos or on different threads and looking at people's blogs and things. And so just slowly building how, like, putting things together. So the first time I built a puppet, everything started with a wire armature, which hasn't changed much. I found this video that was showing how to build a wire armature that just made sense. So one thing I'm going to show is what a lot of people do when they build an armature, which I'm going to show you not to do, is a lot of people will start with a wire, they'll fold it in half, they'll pinch, and then they'll twist.
Mm-hmm. That's what I remember seeing, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you never do that. So when you do this, specifically, what you're doing is immediately weakening the wire because you're twisting it, you're bending it, you're already putting stress on the wire.
Yeah.
And so I was digging and digging because I was having an issue with my arms and legs and necks breaking, which is gruesome and sad when you're using a puppet. And I finally found this tutorial on how to build a puppet in which, I don't know if you can see it, but you're it's not twisted. I've taken a string and all the wires are the same length, and I basically bundled them like a bunch of sticks. And then you wrap with string, you glue at the end. And what this does is as you're bending, you're only putting the strain in the wire as you bend it. And so if one breaks, you actually have 3 more wires to go through before your puppet is dead.
And because it's reinforced.
Yes, very reinforced. Then even with the spine, I've got about, I want to say, I think there's 12 wires in the spine. And so that's really nice because as your puppets get built, they become heavier and heavier. And just like with us, we want to make sure to reinforce everything that is getting a lot of weight put on them.
Absolutely. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So please interrupt with questions should you.
Absolutely.
I'm just
do you still have a link to where you discovered that so we could see like an image of how to bundle the wires if we wanted to?
Yeah, I will definitely try and find it. I believe it was with a special effects school. So I forget exactly the name of it. But I will try and find it, and then I will definitely post it. What I do then is I'll go through and I'll actually take a pipe cleaner, which I use a lot for almost everything, and I'll bind together underneath this gray goo is pipe cleaners that are just wrapping everything apart. And then I'll use the epoxy putty, which I think is really kind of the best thing to use to seal off the wires because it'll dry really hard and essentially makes a rib cage and some hip joints for you. But the main thing is that you never want to bend at these joints or else that will break. So we always make a little bit of a length.
Like a
so
little
that
shoulder joint. Yeah.
Exactly. And then they get padded.
Aha!
This is one I've just started.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's going to be an interesting character. I can already see.
Yeah. So this one, my plan is she's going to be a like Scottish Highland woman.
Oh, nice.
I'm going to give her, I've got somewhere I've got this plaid fabric that I'm going to be using, making her a really big kilt. And so what's nice about that is I don't actually have to finish her legs off because they're going to be absolutely hidden from
By the skirt.
So always work smart, not hard. But you can see I've started patting her out. And these are the pipe cleaners. So anywhere that I'm going to be putting felt, I make sure to wrap with the pipe cleaners because the felt will actually grab onto that. If you're just putting the felt on top of the wire, it's really hard to get it to stick. It'll slide right off.
Okay.
Do you have, is that just like a wool batting or is it? Okay.
Yeah, totally is.
So what I do is I've got my nifty little needle felting needles. So I don't know if you can see that. They're very sharp and they've got these little spines all over them. And so needle felting is great because you can basically sculpt just by stabbing. And what's nice is you can get it, really build them up, and the more you stab, the more dense it actually becomes. And so you can create really fluffy things, but also really kind of almost solid.
Neat.
Yeah, so like there's parts of her that are fluffier and softer, and then parts of her that are harder, so that I don't have as much like crunch when I move them. So that's very much something to be aware of when building them is when you move them, if they're really soft, your fingers will actually dent them. So you want them to be fairly firm.
Mm-hmm.
So then back to my rudimentary puppets.
Ooh,
I make them all with replaceable heads, which I'm working on figuring out how to do replaceable faces soon. That's just the next step.
That's just smart. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And so what I've got here is brass stock. And so I use the square tubing, and on the inside there's another square that actually fit together, and that creates it so they're pretty much stuck, but I can turn them really easily. And so it really grips on and they're able to turn around. Now, I didn't learn this lesson when I first made these, and you can see my terrible.
Yeah.
So what happened is I built this whole puppet with hands included, and then I couldn't get its clothes on. So I had to actually cut off both of their hands. She's even worse. Hers is barely hanging on by a thread.
Aw.
But I didn't know then how to create reusable hands. So actually with Lisa, I'm really excited with what I learned with her because she's my newest one. I've learned a lot with how to build something a little bit more functional. So her hands are fully removable, and that means that I can take her shirt off a lot easier if I need to change her clothes, if I need to remove anything or adjust anything, if I need new hands.
Yeah.
They're fully removable and replaceable. And they're also made from wire, and I've wrapped them in medical tape.
Oh, nice.
Yes. So these are all medical tape, which is great because now they are posable.
Oh, so that's just painted medical tape? Like there's nothing on top of it at all to seal it? It's just painted.
Yep, painted with acrylic. My next goal, what I just got to play with, is some liquid latex. So that's what I'm really excited to play with. And I just found a tutorial on hands in which you take your pipe cleaners and you shave them. And that gives something for the liquid latex to kind of grip onto.
Okay.
And so that's kind of my next play, is seeing if I can build some really nice movable hands and paint on liquid latex and really get something that has a little bit more of a skin quality. And which is, we'll see how that goes. I'm not fully confident yet.
I thought you were going to use the liquid latex to make yourself a cast or a mold, so you could make multiple
That
things.
is something. That will be a goal of mine. Right now, I don't really have the space. So making a mold, basically this is like a one shot. So I can take it, I'll paint it. I'll literally use a paintbrush, paint it on top of the wire, and then I can paint that with acrylic. If I do a mold, it's just a couple more steps, and I'm just, I guess I'm not confident enough yet in my ability to make a mold and then cast it properly and then seam it and then put it all together. That's just like,
it's a lot. It really is a lot. Yeah.
So we'll see. That's a goal of mine for sure. A couple more things. So all of these guys, their heads are all made from Premier. So this is an air dry clay, and I chose the air dry clay purely based off the fact that I didn't want to use my oven.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. So I actually really like it though, especially with Lisa. What was nice about it is I could build a skull and then slowly build up and carve back. And so this is really nice. It's slow moving, but you use water with it. You can build on top of it. You can attach other things. I attached her ears separately. It wasn't sculpted all in one go. And then I was able to carve down and create her eyes by just carving away and carving away. And so that was
neat.
Really nice. Same with her mouth. I carved in so she can actually put things into her mouth. And so I carved that out. And so that's was really useful.
Yeah, those are just like metal sculpting tools that you have for that?
Yeah, so I have a vast collection of both, these are rubber, so this is rubber, and then all different kinds of clay sculpting tools, wires.
Yep.
This one was I made this from a guitar string, so that was nice and easy.
Nice.
Scoops, knives, basically anything that you can get that is sharp can be used on clay.
My old art teacher used to go to dental clinics and ask for their broken hygienist tools.
That's great. If you have a dental hookup, they are the best tools for clay.
Oh yeah.
Hands down. And so him too, he was carved and sculpted, and then I actually glued tinfoil onto him and sanded away bits and pieces of him, so he's got some metallic flecks going on, but he is almost entirely clay. He is not made from metal. And then he's got this little light bulb, which I found at the hardware store, which I'm absolutely in love with. So yeah, so that's kind of my process, what I'm learning with the puppets right now. My next goal is figuring out how to take their faces and make a mold of them and then make the replaceable faces.
Yeah. Without having a big ass seam running around them, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I will be able to Photoshop out for sure. But it would be great if I could hide it maybe in their hairline or something like that. Figuring out how to do that would be really nice. And just learning different ways to make it a little bit easier to reuse the bodies and then replace their heads and make, because that's, if I can do that, then I can make a book with one puppet, but I'm just replacing the heads for different scenes, for different shots, and hopefully moving on to learning animation and being able to replace their expressions. And
have you seen the behind the scenes version of the material that's supported for Paranorman? Okay, so they have those replaceable faces, and they print them all in a 3D printer and plug them in like a Mr. Potato Head or something like that. I don't know where they get rid of their seams, but is that what you're alluding to when you're talking about replaceable faces in the future?
Yeah. So how Paranorman and Leica in general. So Paranorman, I believe, is an older version of what Leica does now. And it's actually, they have a brow piece, a bottom face piece, and they click on to a full head piece. So their seams were right in here.
Oh,
They had
okay.
a seam that connected their eyes because their eyes were hollow. So they had a seam that went here, and then a seam that was invisible in the hairline, and a seam that came down underneath the chin, I think. What they do is in post, they'll actually go in, and just like we would with Photoshop, you can clone out essentially or mask out those seams and just erase them. And so, I mean, even with Lisa, when I took the photo, her eyes were not as big as I wanted them to be. So I used the liquify tool in Photoshop and actually blew her eyes up a bit because I wanted them to be a little bit more expressive.
Nice.
And I actually raised her lip a little bit more because
I thought you did, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted her to really have that expression. And sometimes you know, for me, I couldn't see it until it was sitting on my screen, that she just wasn't quite there. And I'm hoping that is something that I can learn and double check. And in the carving process, I can really exaggerate what I'm working on while I'm working on it. Here's a big cat beast.
Every studio needs a big cat.
Yes.
Meow.
So a couple more things that I learned how to do this time around. So this piece is something I'm actually particularly proud of that is in the background. This is a little lamp that I made. My goal is to eventually figure out how to wire it, because there is a place where you could wire it. This is a jam lid. So just making sure everybody knows you can do this. These are brass stocks I got from the hardware store.
Mm-hmm.
These are little rivets. And again, hardware store, a little screw. So everything, I think this was probably, with all said and done, this is probably a 30-cent prop.
Awesome.
So yeah, I'm very pro finding what you have in the house and just making it work. A lot of my scraps, I went and dumpster dived at, my husband works at a machine shop. And so I came in on the weekend and I went dumpster diving, and that's where I got all of the scraps. So these are little metal shavings. These aren't actually springs. They're metal shavings. And then just chunks. I got chunks of metal and bits and pieces to make everything feel a little bit more blown up. And so all said and done, this is actually a fairly cheap illustration. Time-wise, not so much. Very expensive when it comes to time.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, not a quick way of doing things.
I have a question. Have you ever tried to have, like, on a blank face, use clay for facial expressions?
Not yet. As I said, I mean, we're being really honest, I've only made 3.
Mm-hmm.
So I have yet to experiment with a lot of different methods. My goal, I mean, my next one, and I'm actually considering that for the next one, is I'll have blank eyes, which I almost did for her. And so then I can put them in Photoshop. I'll just draw a dog.
Yep.
And then probably also stickers for the mouths.
Stickers is a good idea.
Good.
Yeah.
I'd be tempted just to draw them in Photoshop myself.
Mm-hmm.
Just have a blank face and draw them.
Yeah. What's hard, I will say, is when I was photographing her when she didn't have pupils, because I did a series of photos where she had no pupils. And it was actually really hard to like any of the images. It was almost like I had to take the photo, then go into Photoshop, draw on her pupils just to like accept that the photo was okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so none of those photos got used because I just couldn't like them.
Yeah.
So there's something about having the expression that's actually, I feel, is really important, which is hard to balance. So that's definitely something I want to learn, how to make the puppets where the faces are replaceable and the eyes are movable. So that's one of my next goals.
Because I know Nick Park, even though Wallace and Gromit is all clay, they do make like the little mouths. They make a bunch of little mouths that they replace.
Yeah.
I thought if it's something you can stick on the face, and then you could just remove it, that might be fun.
I've seen a lot of people using removable eyes and mouths with magnets. That is something I'm really interested in exploring. Basically, they build the face blank, but they build it where there's magnets underneath the skin. And then they have these separate tiny magnets that they're putting into the eyebrows, they put them into the eyelids, they put them into the mouths, and then you can essentially just click them into place.
Cool.
So that's definitely something that is going to be worth exploring. So yeah, faces are definitely one of the harder things to learn. I'm figuring out.
I'm unsurprised.
Yeah.
This is obviously a labor of love. How did you ever fall into this? I mean, this is a thing.
It is. It's a big thing. I have always wanted to do puppets. A dream of mine is to work in stop motion. I love fabricating. I love sewing. I love sculpting. I love making things with my hands. I'll show you one weird one.
Show us a deep, dark secret. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So this was a piece I built probably about 3 years ago. This is one of my biggest needle felted sculptures. It is called a vegetable lamb. Yes. So it is you can Google it. It's a thing. It's a thing. They speculated when people were first seeing the cotton plant, they thought that it was actually how sheep were grown. So they saw these little cotton bulbs and they thought that it was growing tiny little sheep. So there were scientific essays written about this, and I just loved that idea. So this is my vegetable lamb sculpture. It's one of the first times I used a real armature in my sculptures. So this, I mean, the jumping off point from here, using almost entirely felt to mixing in clay, was actually a fairly small jump. I had done clay sculptures before, but I'd never mixed the two. And so once I realized that I could build the wireframe, build the face, and then use the felt as a way to pad out the sculpture, all I had to do was learn how to sew and figure it out.
Neat.
Yeah. So I don't know if you all know, I think his name is Chris Seckles. He is Red Nose Studio. His work, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend looking it up. He has been a huge influence of mine, astronomical influence. His work is incredible, and he does editorial work, children's books, and he does everything dimensionally, just like this. So the amount of time he spends, I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he works that fast, especially for editorial work where the turnaround is, so fast. But he's kind of somebody who I'm looking at being like, okay, this is a realistic thing that I could do if I just figure it out.
Yeah, this is a style that will work.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, super
My guess
cool.
is he already has like a bunch of pre-made puppets.
Oh, he totally
to
does. If you look him up on YouTube, there's some interviews where they take place in his studio, and he's just got shelves and shelves of puppets everywhere, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
So I'll get there someday.
How did you determine the scale that you were working at?
Well, that's a really good question. I knew that I needed something that was big enough for me to get details into, but small enough where it could fit into these two walls, I guess. And I could actually probably have gone a little bit bigger, but when it came to filling the room, it just made sense to work a little bit smaller just in case I needed to get the camera in closer or need to pull it out. And so basically, I kind of figured that this is like the easy size that you just sort of fall into. Same with these guys. They're roughly, let's imagine she's 10 and this is me at, 27. So they're kind of similar in
similar scale.
Yeah, just giant head. So there kind of is this like happy medium of size where you're getting something that you can get detail in, but still move it around, but it's not so big that you can't, this is already taking up a large portion of my dining room.
Oh yeah.
So I think it even looks small in the screen. I don't know. Let me see if I can give you a little bit more of a sense. So this is pretty big, this room. And, I froze. So that's kind of how I had to think about it. It was something that I could work in, that I could fit in my room, and that I could get enough detail in without feeling like I was going blind.
Nice.
Yeah. What else can I show? Let's see. Some of the things that one thing that I can highly recommend if anybody wants to ever venture into this world. I didn't have a tripod when I was taking the photos of this illustration.
Oh dear.
So I actually had built, my husband helped me take his camping camera holder. So basically you stick this on the end of a stick and it turns into a selfie stick.
Huh.
And then we used block of wood and a bunch of wire to basically make a really, really terrible tripod. It was brutal. I just got in the mail a little tripod with a little clicker. So one of the biggest things that I was struggling with while taking the photo is any tiny little bit of movement, especially at this scale, you could see every little shape. So that was a struggle that I had to get through. I took probably 300 photos to get just one shot.
Damn.
That was the very last photo that I took.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. But a lot of them were very blurry. Some of them were out of focus. I didn't know how to focus. I still don't really know how to focus.
Which phone do you have?
If any of you have cameras that you can recommend, I'm still.
Oh, I wish I could.
How did you avoid shadows? I mean,
oh yeah, how do you light this?
Yeah.
So you can see I've got a lamp right up there. So that's my backdrop. So fortunately, I have a brother who is a cinematographer. He's a director of photography, actually.
Nice.
And so he was constantly on speed dial for me during this project. And I was sending him photos going, what do I do? How do I light this? Where, why are my colors so bad? Why does all these questions that I had, he was really able to talk me through it. So what I had was, I had 3 lights. I had this top light, which lights the back of the room so that the thing with working at this scale is shadows get overblown immediately. I mean, you can already tell in here, these shadows make no sense for the scale. All the little pieces have these giant shadows because they're coming from a giant light source. So you have to backlight it. Then I had a light coming from this side and then a light coming from behind me. I used tracing paper. I wrapped all the lights in tracing paper to diffuse them. And I had to be constantly moving them back and forth to try and get the proper shadow lengths. And even then, if you look at my photo, I didn't get them. I did not get the proper shadow lengths in some levels. I know the little stuffed bear in the back has a really big shadow. So it's definitely something that I will have to learn more about. And then also I'm set up right next to a window, which sucked. I couldn't control the lighting coming through the window. So that was really hard.
Gotta work at night.
So working at night though, it got too dark.
Oh.
And so then the shadows were even bigger. And so I would have needed almost like flood lighting to neutralize everything. Because the trick is you want to light it from the back and then the 2 sides, because that creates shadows to collapse inward. So you just get it underneath the figure. if you light it from one side, you're going to get really big shadows compared to your puppet.
Yeah.
Because if we think about her, if she's only supposed to be maybe 4 feet tall and she's got a shadow that in her world is 8 feet long, it's going to look weird.
Fair enough. Yeah,
It's also,
sorry, go ahead.
sorry, it's also in part that your light's so close to your objects that you get the large ones. I did a little bit in my photography class in university or college, whatever. And no, I didn't enjoy doing it. But I tried to do it once.
It's hard. It's hard.
Well, I just did it with paper, and I was like, no, this is not for me.
Yeah.
I'll stay flat.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to do in like a theater setting too.
Yeah.
Go to a
And
theater,
that's
steal some
problematic.
from Nels.
Yes. I wanted to make some gels for my lights because I was hoping to have like, I don't know, some like blue shadows and purple, things like that I wanted to mix in. But my brother told me not to go crazy and that I was making my life really hard. So that stopped that.
Well, okay.
It's not like it wasn't hard enough. Good grief.
Yes. And I acknowledge this project I started, actually the month before, I made Mr. McGillicuddy, which is he had a very long neck and he was in a room that was falling apart with a dinosaur. For SBS Learn. And that was originally the piece that I had really wanted to do this way, but I chickened out. I had started a puppet for him, and I had this idea of how to make it, and I just absolutely chickened out. But then what happened with this is I actually chickened out with drawing a robot, because I don't know how you feel, but I didn't know and want to draw a robot. So I figured blowing up a can would be a lot easier. It was, at the very least.
Very good.
And so that's how this started. It was really me avoiding drawing a robot.
Fair
I think
enough.
some of the things that might fix your lighting issues is textures.
Mm-hmm.
Because some textures like my girlfriend's a production designer, so one of the movies that she worked on made it to South by Southwest this year. Doesn't really matter this year, but it was very sad. But like one of the scenes is like focusing on the couch, and she put like I don't know what you call those covers, but she like sewed on a cover with a specific kind of texture that made you focus on the couch more, and it was very interesting. I know nothing of production design. She has a master's, but like clearly texture seemed to work. And I really like the texture on your can because it's got like the little lines going on it, and the corduroy apron.
Yeah. And that corduroy apron, it was really funny. I have it right here. So I actually had bought this from a thrift store for myself. It was a pair of overalls. But I bought it without actually trying them on because, thrift store. I didn't.
That's what you do, yeah.
Did not fit at all, but great because that day I was like, well, I'm just going to chop it up then because it'll make a really good apron. So I agree. The textures are really important. One thing that I don't like is the texture of the walls. I only had spray paint and I only had green. So I was really fortunate that the green walls actually turned into something that I liked because I had no choices on what to paint the walls. But they're really shiny. And so I was really struggling with that. In the final photo, I actually ended up digitally putting a couple layers of multiply over them to try and tone down the shine that was created by the photo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Have you tried like colored light bulbs?
I
That
will.
seems expensive.
Okay. Gels. I will do gels.
Or gels.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah, cellophane versus specialist lighting equipment.
Thanks, Magic School Bus.
Yay.
So a couple things that were like really integral that I feel like don't get talked about is for me having Gorilla Glue, super glue, not Gorilla Glue in specific, but super glue I used, I think 4 things of super glue in this project.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so much super glue. And then also I used this Quake Hold. Living in California, we all have them. So I had this Quake hold, which is essentially this sticky stuff that's supposed to hold your pictures in place. But a lot of this stuff is stuck on there with that so that I can move it around and reposition it if I didn't like how it was set up. And so that was
recommend.
Cool. And then everything was basically made in cardboard.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. I'm not gonna lie. It's like the model builders plywood. I mean.
Yes. Yeah, it was great. So I've actually started saving all of my cardboard boxes and chopping them up. I've got a stack of cardboard now that I just plan on using and using.
Nice.
Is the little desk also made from cardboard? The drawers and that little cabinet.
Okay, I'm supposed to take this down. I promised my husband that this was going to be going away soon.
Aw.
So yeah, this is all cardboard. You can see I actually had originally was going to be painting it a color. That was a mistake. I didn't like that at all. So that stopped. And then I went with just, going with the actual cardboard color, but making it have some wood grain. You can see, none of it's perfect. It's got all this glue. It's not fitting together properly, but all of that kind of goes away when you can change the camera angle. And then I decided to leave. Somebody told me to get rid of the corrugated sides to make it look more real. But I actually ended up really liking the fact that you could look at it and say, yeah, okay, that's cardboard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought that was really kind of an exciting part of it.
Yeah, it's got some charm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And then like these guys, these are all made from clay.
Mhm.
The little tools, we've got more cardboard here. And then this was actually destroying everything. These are all popsicle sticks. And what's funny is this was going to be her workbench. I was originally not going to be making this. But what happened, speaking of scale, is I thought that this worked great with her, but once I built her room and I put them in it, if I take this away and just put this here.
Oh, yeah.
Scale-wise,
Very empty.
changes everything. And so that's when I decided I needed to make sure that she had some cabinets. And that really started. So to be honest, this was all just kind of playing because I hadn't planned for half of this stuff. It came about because I was looking at it being like, oh my God, this doesn't work at all. And I just started having to build more things to fill the room to make it look like it was actually a room.
So how much time did you put into this then?
That was going to be one of my big questions too.
So I didn't time myself, which I regret. The next one I will definitely have a little stopwatch where I'll be for SBS Learn. I will be for sure keeping track of time.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Too bad it's a flat fee.
I know. My husband says he thinks roughly 80 hours. I don't know if it was that much. But it was a lot. It was definitely over 40.
Well, if you built everything from scratch, I'm not too surprised.
Yeah.
But if you were able to recycle some of this for the next one,
it'd
probably take a lot less time.
That's the goal, is once I start building up kind of a collection of things that I can use over and over, it'll get faster, just like with Red Nose Studio. And then I can start adapting things, repainting them, remolding them, and kind of be able to get a production line almost where I can sort of chug these out a little bit faster.
Mm-hmm.
And then also puppet. I'm hoping to have essentially like a stock of just puppet bodies that I can create different hands for, I can create different heads for.
Yeah, stick different clothes on them and you're good to go.
Yeah. So that's going to be an experiment in itself.
I really wish you had a Patreon.
I'm thinking about it. I don't think I'm there yet.
Okay.
I think that would be an entire other. I still have a day job, so I still don't have that much time to dedicate to this. Which is
wait a second. You did this on top of a day job? So
yeah.
You put in Okay then. Okay.
Yes. Yes, I am that crazy right now.
Fair
And
enough.
I love it, to be honest. It is how I like to spend my time. I mean, drawing is great. I love drawing. I love painting. But it's almost like the drawings that I do feel like a stepping off point that I want to bring into the physical world. That's kind of how I think about a lot of my characters. I started off mostly just drawing characters. I really love drawing characters. And it felt like they were always plans to bring into the three-dimensional world. And so now that I'm finally learning how to actually do that, the drawings are more exciting for me because then I can think of, well, how would I make these clothes? How would I design their hair? How can I make them function in the physical realm? And so I don't know how many of you saw her original sketch. She stayed fairly true to the original sketch concept, but for me, it's like bringing her to life was really giving her, making this pointy nose, giving her these big ears. And a lot of that had to do with me just sculpting and playing. Her hair has wires in them because I was originally thinking that maybe she would have more of these like pigtails. That would be, so it's all just play at this point. Hopefully someday I'll have a more of a plan and I can draw something out and be like, that's exactly what it's going to look like dimensionally. Right now, not so much.
That's so hard to do, though.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
How did
even
you
with
paint the hair? Sorry. How did you paint the hair?
It's not. So wool comes in a variety of color. Okay. So I've got massive amounts of different colored wool. So this is what's called core wool. And core wool is cheap. It's not dyed. It usually has plant matter in it. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh yeah.
It's sometimes it's oily. It's not great, but it's cheap, which means you can stuff something really fast. And then you use the colored wool on top of it. Like this is all different colors of greens that I've blended into white wool, and then there's yellow and black. So all different. This is entirely wool. There's no painting on this sculpture.
Gotcha.
Which is why needle felting, if any of you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it because it is this really fun way where you can kind of paint with the wool and you can get this dimensional thing. And there's even people who do flat paintings. They paint with the wool, which is a really beautiful effect because you can get such a range of colors and blend them together just like you would paint.
I'm going to have to check that out. That actually seems like a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. It's a little dangerous. You're going to stab your fingers a lot, but that just keeps you on your toes.
It's all right. I'll introduce it to my nieces and nephews. They can try it first.
Excellent.
I can watch.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Are there any more questions? Yeah.
You might have answered this when I stepped away, but like when you were showing the 3 wires for the arms and legs, for the limbs with the string, can you show that again?
Yeah. So that's basically you take the wires and you're just putting them parallel. So.
And then you.
And you're tying them with string.
Yeah. Okay. So I can actually do a really fast little demo of it.
So it's like a bundle of sticks wrapped with a rope.
Exactly. That is precisely what it is. Of course, I've missed. Oh, there it is.
How do they attach, like, to the spine on the inside?
So on the inside, basically, let me show you on my little diagram.
Thank you.
So this is, they always start out with a sketch.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm doing is I'm actually taking a wire and I am tracing with just one wire along the arm, and then I'll bring it down the spine. And so this is just giving me the length of wire that I need. And then I'll make a crook out of it. And so let's say this is the length of wire that I need. Okay. So I know that that's going to go from the end of the wrist all the way down to the toe.
Oh, cool.
So I'll cut that. And then I will cut 4 of these lengths and just keep them straight. I just keep them absolutely straight. And so I'll just do it with 2. Maybe it's a really weak puppet. And what I'll do is when I get them bundled together, so they should be the same length, they're going in the same direction, I start at the top with just regular thread, and I'll take it and I'll wrap all here.
Okay.
I'll just wrap, and then I'll glue that. I'll use super glue to make sure that sticks. And then I'm just taking this and spinning all the way down.
Okay.
And every once in a while, I'm going to take the thread and actually put it in between the wires. And that just creates kind of like an in-between little knot. And then I'll start twisting again. And so I'll do that, and I'll basically get 2 of the exact same sets of 4. So with this, so this starts here. This is one continuous wire that goes up, down, all the way down to the toe. So that's one set of 4 all the way down, and then another set of 4 that goes all the way down. And so already here, there's now 8
you got a nice sturdy spine.
Well, but even more than that, I'll then take another one to create the neck. So now there's another set of 4 that goes up from here to here. So now there's 12 pieces of wire that are all going in the same direction, that are all wrapped. So this is a really sturdy spine. I mean, this is not.
Put the clay around the
Yes.
parts. Okay, cool.
And what I use is a 2-part epoxy putty. And so the 2-part epoxy putty is then put onto to create a rib cage and a hip joint. And that's really nice because those are in moving. Those, when we move our bodies, we can move our spines, we can move our necks, but we can't actually shift our rib cage. We can't actually shift our hip, the bones in our hips. And so that creates these blocks so that you're not suddenly bending your character where they wouldn't technically bend. And so let's see if I can, there goes her head. So under this puppet, there's actually this firm rib cage. And so I can bend her at the hip joints. I can move her all over the place, but I can't actually bend her where she wouldn't move.
Oh, that is super cool.
Really cool.
So everything's fairly almost anatomical. You'll see puppets actually that have they put the epoxy putty where you would have your arms as well, and they just leave this joint free so that you can't bend because right now I'm not doing that. So my arms bend all over the place, which is not anatomical. So some puppet builders will actually create rigid points in the arms and the legs, just like they would with bones, so that you can only physically bend it where they would want to bend. I personally haven't found that to be great for me yet. Maybe if I really am doing stop motion, what I find a problem with that is that it creates a lot of pinch points. And so it puts a lot of stress in that one area where you're bending it. And so you're more likely to break your puppet.
Okay.
So that's just for me. I'm not a professional, so I'm not up to code. Leica would not hire me. But that's something I might play around with in the future.
Little foots.
So so that kind of explains how that armature works.
It's really cool that they're very stable when they're standing. Like I appreciate that so much.
They're not actually.
Oh.
So I just pulled her feet off, but if let's see if I can pop it back on. What actually it is that I have these spikes. So these are the ends of the wires. Yeah. So this is a
and that is styrofoam.
thing of foam. And so
Brilliant.
just stick it.
Oh, what a hellish existence.
Oh, it'd be really fun to animate like a puppet melting into that.
Yeah. That would be crazy.
So,
Yeah.
so I guess you haven't done like feet and toes. You just have shoes.
You just got little
Felty things.
feet.
Would you ever do feet and toes, because you've done hands, and then they couldn't actually fit you.
It's all about if the puppet needs it. So like if I were doing something in which they had to wiggle their toes, or I wanted them to be barefoot, totally. I would 100%. Probably the same exact ways that I make the hands, I would be building the toes. But again, bringing back to this, I know that her legs are going to be completely covered. Now I could spend the time and build out her legs the same way that I built out Lisa's. You know, she is stuffed under here. She has a form because I wanted to make sure that her pants fit and had the shape that I wanted them to be.
Because if you do like a series of shots, or like for a whole book, and by chance in one shot she'd actually go barefoot, how would you start giving her feet beforehand, or just?
So probably the same way that I build the hands, I'd have replaceable feet. So like, let's say in one scene they'd have shoes on, one scene they wouldn't. I would use my brass stock and I'd create replaceable feet specifically for that scene. There's a lot of people who, you know, let's say there's a close-up of, you know, the character with just their feet and they have no shoes on. I would just build separate feet. And I wouldn't spend time adjusting the puppet. If I knew that the puppet was never going to be seen barefoot, but I knew that I wanted bare feet, just build the feet, build the puppet. You know, you don't need to mix it. It all comes down to spending the time where it needs to be spent. And so, you know, like with their feet, they were the first feet that I ever made. They're terrible. They're ugly. They're not removable. I think I would do that differently next time. I will make feet that are removable, and then I can sculpt the feet separately and attach them on after the fact. Also because it makes putting pants on a lot easier when you can pop the feet off.
Absolutely.
It makes me wonder how, I don't know, you haven't done the animations, because I have so many questions.
I wish I could answer animation questions. Someday I hope to. I've been watching a lot of tutorials. I understand the basic concepts. I understand, you know, what I will need to learn how to do, but the actual getting through the animation, I tried to make a little like GIF with her. I did try. It was hard. I failed. She's not great at it. I will say one thing, her head, if you can see,
wobbles a little bit.
Stable.
Yeah.
She has a little bit of a bubble head. That is a kink I need to work out. And then with this also, because of the way that I'm wiring my puppets, there's this thing called, I think they call it chatter in animation, where basically you can see when you take the photos where I'm putting my hands is crinkling the clothing. So you have to be really careful when animating to not change the position of the clothing as you are moving the puppet. So I found that really frustrating. That was really hard. So it's going to take even more patience. By the time I'd finished this, I was completely out of patience. I was so ready to stop working on this project that I just couldn't bring myself to do a 3-second GIF and you know, 5 hours on it. So yeah, that's next goal. I think with this next puppet, I'm hoping that I'll be able to do something with them to animate. I might make her, you know, I think I might give her a Highland cow and make her, I don't know, maybe she's playing with the cow, or she's playing some kind of whistle and the cow comes over, or something like that. But just something really small to learn how to move a figure across a plane.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a bit of an echo now on my end.
Oh.
Oh boy, do I ever.
Are there any last minute questions? I know we're going to be wrapping up in a second.
Just a quick question. Have you thought of using ball joints, or are there ball joints out there that you can just buy so you don't have to worry about those things?
I just ordered my first official animation skeleton.
Oh, awesome.
So I just got in the mail. It's not put together yet. I have to put it together, which is going to be a learning process as well. But I'm really excited to play around with an actual armature that will have the movement of an actual stop motion puppet.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Are those things like super expensive, but it's a one-time use, obviously, right?
Yeah, and that's why I kind of hesitated to buy it in the first place, because once you put the puppet on it, generally you're not going to be getting that puppet off.
Okay.
And I think you can still make replaceable heads and hands and feet, but it is more complicated, and they are fairly pricey. I bought the cheapest one that I could find, and I still think it was like $50.
Okay.
And the professional ones range from like $150 to like $300. They're a lot.
Okay.
So
you do have a machinist in the family, though,
I know.
right?
Yes. Unfortunately, he works with really big machines.
Okay.
So when
Yeah.
I asked him, because I did ask if he could machine me these tiny little parts, and he said no.
No, not today. Right on.
Today. Maybe someday.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, then I think we could probably wrap it up.
Yeah.
If that's okay, because I should go make sure that the kitchen hasn't been utterly destroyed in my momentary absence.
Alive and nobody's lost a toe.
Yeah, oh, that'd be fine. No one notices that. Anyways, thank you so much. This was really cool.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I've got some clay. I'm gonna go play with it.
Awesome.
Do it. Yes.
Good luck with the.
Go learn how to needle felt. I just highly recommend it. Great stress release.
Mhm.
Really fun, and you can build models that you can then draw from. That's build your own models. A little cleaner than clay.
DIY toys. DIY toys.
Yes.
DIY toys.
Kids love it.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Thank you again. Have
Thank
fun
you
with the
again.
SBS illustration.
Thanks.
I'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.